I desire the deaths of only a very few, but the chief prosecutor hadn't descended into Ninx Varishlat to keep me apprised of current events. He wanted something, and he knew better than to expect help from Eben the Warlock without offering something in return.
"An acolyte of Turalem," he went on, when I didn't reply, "on her way to Nagivaros from the south, traveling with a contingent of 6 armed guards. She was killed violently in a room of the inn where she had stopped for the night. The guards heard her screams, but the door was barred from inside. By the time they hacked their way in, she'd been mauled to death. There was no one else in the room."
The prosecutor's visit began to make sense. Under pressure to solve an inexplicable case, he came to consult the only sorcerer he had at his disposal, hoping I could give him some answers. I wondered how much the answers were worth to him. I would like to report that I maintained a stoic demeanor, but no one who has not been imprisoned in a place like Ninx Varishlat can know how desperate I was for some improvement, or at least a change in my circumstances. Even conversation with a person as unpleasant as the prosecutor was a blessed reprieve from the eternal gloom and monotony of my cell. But it would not serve me to appear too eager, and I had learned the skill of patience. I did my best to affect an air of glibness. "I believe," I said, "I was in my cell that day." He gave me a pained smile, attempting to meet my gaze. This was a mistake, as it revealed his lack of resolve. After a second, he looked away. No one can look at my face very long.
"Geography is no barrier to sorcery," he said, renewing his interest in the wall.
"But these walls are," I said, or did I misunderstand the purpose of my stay here? He reached out and touched the wall and then pulled his hand back, rubbing the white residue between his fingertips.
"I wonder if it's really as simple as that."
I shrugged. For 300 years, Ninx Varishlat has been the main source of salt throughout Orsag. When the miners had dug so deep that it was no longer worthwhile to remove the salt, the mine had been shuttered. 40 years later, the acolytes reopened it as a prison for those suspected of practicing sorcery, salt being a well-known impediment to magic. Whether it worked was still a matter of debate, but no one had ever escaped from Ninx Varishlat. When it became clear that I had nothing more to say on the matter, the prosecutor spoke again.
"I have been authorized to give you certain rewards."
"Such as?" He hesitated a moment.
"Your freedom."
I stared at him, unable to completely contain my shock. A pardon for a man facing a life sentence for sorcery in exchange for help with a murder I couldn't possibly know anything about? It was so absurd it could only be true. If he were lying, he'd have promised some small improvement in my accommodations, a new mattress or block of cheese. Not a pardon. "You are offering my freedom in return for information about this murder?"
"I don't expect that you know anything about this particular crime, but perhaps you know something that might help. A name, maybe."
"You wish me to offer up another sorcerer? Have you forgotten that you had them all killed?"
"Apparently we were not as thorough as we thought."
"You haven't answered my question. What are the terms you offer?"
"I can only say that your help would be appreciated."
The prosecutor's evasiveness suggested he was hiding something. But if he were lying about the pardon, he'd have doubled down when prompted to clarify his offer. Instead, he'd left the matter intentionally vague. He was willing to mislead me, but he stopped short of an outright lie. "Why?" I saw the answer on his face as he continued to avoid my gaze. He was afraid of me. Specifically, he was afraid of what I would do to him if he lied to me. I was powerless to hurt him as long as I remained in Ninx Varishlat, so his fear suggested the matter of my release was out of his hands. It all dovetailed. Istvan's offer of freedom wasn't conditional on my assistance. That was merely an inference he'd hoped to make. He'd been